Alright guys, I'm going to show you the Carrack, what I think it's going to be good for, how I plan to use it, some of the different options I think you can use to load this out, but what I overall decided to use. I've been testing a number of things. I do like this ship a lot, mainly just for the military potential of it. I think it's very nice. When you look at the top of this Carrack here, being able to walk out onto the top of the ship gives you potential to defend it with, land-air weaponry if you have it on board the ship or anything like that. In this vein, I think that this top deck, the cartography deck, should be your security deck. This should be anyone and that basically is going to be running security, point man, able to do ground-based assaults. They should all be on this deck, ready to go with guns, whatever you need. This upper deck should be used for dropping off cargo for the ship, for its crew, basic supplies, medical rescues potentially. Depending on the situation, you can go inside the deck or just on top of the deck. But overall, I think this is going to be the security section of the ship. There is a few points on the ship that I've looked into for using for prisoner cells. There is, some extra space in between the bottom turret and the weapon armory in the bottom of the ship. You have bathroom stalls that you could technically lock people into in the crew quarters and other than that. But I think one of the best places is probably either like the medical bay, the mess hall, potentially, and this right here. So essentially what you would do is you do search and rescue after an operation. Your crew does an operation, you do search and rescue. You destroyed a bunch of fighters from the enemy, etc., etc. They go out, they rescue them, they bring them back, they drop off all prisoners on the top of the ship, they get medical treatment if they need it. Then what would happen is your security forces would come out of this cartography bay, strip down the enemies, all their weapons, their armor, etc., and then they would walk them into this here bay. Alright, so this bay is completely isolated. I don't see any valuable controls or anything else like this. It's basically an airlock with a bunch of wasted space. So they'll stay in here, and you can have your security team watching in this elevator or whatever you want to do. So they'll have access to this elevator to see what's going on. And if anything happens inside of here, if they try to break into the ship, you can shoot them. If they try to leave, they're going to suffocate. That's the general gist of the plan at the moment. And also, these all have to be manually opened, so they're probably the most secure doors that we have on the ship. If we are able to lock those in the future. Hopefully we're able to lock some of those in the future. You have a couple of suit bays up here, so you could put their suits, their armor right here, potentially. There is escape pods, so you try to keep them from getting to that, I suppose. And then back here, you just have this bay here. So technically, you could shove more prisoners back here. It depends on if you want to give them more access to this upper section. I personally probably wouldn't. This is the main elevator that goes into the back of the Carrack. There's a couple of different bays that you should go for. Now, when it comes to this technical bay, the main thing here is just going to be your flight hangar. The rest of this, if you have the Carrack, you can go look at the Carrack. This isn't a ship tour. This right here is the hangar bay. There are options for the hangar. Okay, the Buccaneer you can technically fit in here. I've tossed that over my head. My decision has been if you're a very small crew and you're only going to have one person on the ship, if you're flying it solo or you have like 2 or 3 people, I think the Buccaneer, you fit it in here, you remove the PCs, everything else. You can also fit like 2 Argos in here. You can almost fit 2 PCs in here. You can fit, I think, 4 Furies in here. You can fit the Aurora. Those are like the main key ones. The Aurora gives you an extra bed. pretty good for a starter ship. The PCs, I think, give you more versatility than the Argo does because they have just as much storage capacity for the most part. They have guns on it, they have quantum, and once you get into a bigger group of players, your organization grows. I think the value of the PCs isn't just that it's a
This is
scout ship.
Special Agent Dooley with the CDF. The outlaw group Nine Tails have taken over several platforms on Crusader, and the CDF is seeking for volunteers to help resecure them. Check your contract manager for details.
I don't think the value of the PCs is necessarily just as a scout ship. Yes, it's good for landing on the planet. Yes, you can use it to help defend the Carrack. It does have storage capacity, which is very nice, and it does have the potential of 2 additional players coming with you when you're piloting. I would recommend getting the Expedition version so you get the extra guns. Uh, Otherwise, you could potentially get the PC's Rescue if you don't want the medical version. And I will tell you that there is options for that. If you want to use the PCs for a rescue craft, you can instead of this Expedition. And then if you want to swap out the next ship that I tell you here in a minute for a craft that can do cargo or something along those lines, feel free. But I think the Expedition has a lot of versatility to it, and it's going to be pretty good for shuttling people to and from the Carrack, to and from the ground surface, things along those lines. The big thing with having a bigger organization and how I plan on expanding from the Carrack to other ships is that this is going to be able to shuttle 3 players across to a station or some place that they can get into their ships from a secure zone and ship out if we need it. The main additions that I'm putting for the Carrack, my first off is I upgraded the Buccaneer to the Vulcan, so that's going to be your repair, rearm, refuel, small craft. It's supposed to have a pretty long range, pretty good armor, I believe. It has repair drones. The Carrack can probably keep track and keep care of itself for the most part, doing everything that needs to do besides refuel for the most part. But that ship, at the bare minimum, is going to be able to fly out, help refuel these smaller crafts on the Carrack, help refuel the Carrack as well without having to have the Carrack retreat from a certain area. Uh, and then if the Carrack happens to be out of supplies, it can potentially bring supplies to the Carrack. If it happens to need additional repairs, it can come help do additional repairs. We also don't know if the Carrack is going to be able to have different drones or anything, so there's 2 drone pilot seats. Potentially, I saw 4 drone areas there, so you're assuming if you have, 1 or 2 of those drones for scout drones and maybe like 1 for repair or 1 for medical, maybe that would be some things that you could swap in and out. Potentially, I would say like 2 for medical maybe would be good. And that would help justify not using a rescue PCs if you have medical drones on board the ship. And 2, it helps, pull in more injured into the ship in the first place. Uh, Conversely, the repair drones probably would be beneficial for the Carrack in the long term, but they already are supposed to have repair facilities, so maybe 1 or 2 repair drones. But I think the Vulcan would be an additional ship that I would get that's lower cost, it's smaller, doesn't take a lot of crew, has versatility in the verse, and you'll see that this kind of package of ships that I'm putting together has a lot of versatility, more so than direct firepower. So that refuel, repair, rearm, it's not only going to be able to allow you to do things with the Carrack, but also other players around the universe. If you happen to run across some people in dire need of something, and then it would also have the potential of potentially repairing disabled ships that the Carrack disables in the field, repairing them to an optimal state, and then giving you additional craft for your fleet without having to purchase them in-game is the idea. Now, what I did is get rid of the Buccaneer just to upgrade to that Vulcan, and then we got the Expedition PCs here. And then you're going to have enough room for 2 of these Furies. in this top bay. So you're going to have 6 size 3s, I believe, on those Furies, as well as, I think 4 missiles. And then you're going to be able to have a single pilot fly those. You know, one person in the ship alone could fly them if he had to. Gives you access to some missiles, so that's all good. So you're going to have 2 Furies and this potential here. That also means that the Furies can respond to any sort of ground threats that you have. If you haven't caught on to what I'm doing at the moment, it's going to be the Carrack is essentially getting as much versatility as I can in one package, as much money as I can profit in one area, being able to cover all my ground. So bounty hunting missions and stuff the Carrack's going to be able to do, and these things are going to be able to help. Exploration cargo, these are going to be able to help. We're going to be able to do medical, things like that. So that's the package. All right. As such, I would probably equip this ship with lasers and I'm thinking the bottom turret, I would put distortions. So the lasers would go through the shields. Then the distortions would be able to shut down components on the ships. And then those Furies would be able to help provide some threat, making sure people don't move, etc. The second ship I'm getting for this package that's on the cheaper side is the Legionnaire. Potentially the Legionnaire could dock to the side of the Carrack and quantum jump with it. Also have potentially a boarding crew of, I think, 8, and be able to board any ship in the game. So as you'll see, this package is giving you the Carrack with all of its flexibility, with the Legionnaire able to board and take over ships, and the repair vessel able to take over ships and repair as well. Medical bay you could potentially use as an additional place to store prisoners if you had to. But also it gives you additional beds that you can hold down. So part of the thing with this ship, people say it has a minimum crew of 6, but it has 6 beds, you know, 3 or 4 pilot chairs, I think, or 3 to 6 pilot chairs, I think, 4 turrets, 2 of these medical beds plus this one, and any vehicles that you have on board could provide seats for you to set in. So I'm aiming for a crew size of 12 to 20 potentially, which a lot of people said isn't possible, but we'll see once they put you know, the air systems and stuff into the game. You could also potentially use these you know, food areas and stuff for prison cells if you had to, but I don't think it's needed for the most part. Now, when it comes down to this bottom section, this is why your security forces should be in the cartography zone. This goes instantly all the way down to the armory, where you're going to have suits as well as your weapon racks. So you got, you know, quite a few weapons on both sides. You got 8 weapon racks here, quite a lot of weapons and tools. As far as I recall, that's the best situation on the ship. This right here are the ramps that lead to this back turret, which you could potentially, you know, stick people down here if you wanted to. This would be the turret that I would put for distortions. The reason why I would put distortions on the bottom and probably lasers on the rest is that if we're trying to destroy or disable ships, trying to ink out as much value as we can, the distortion on the bottom when we are landed is just for ground cover, where you don't want it like on the top not being able to put out damage against air cover if you come under attack. So I think underneath is probably the best place for it if we were going to have a gun specifically for that. But essentially, we would try to disable the ships as best we can and then use the distortions against it. Now, when it comes to these cargo bays, we'll get to that here in a second. I'm going to go to the front of the ship and show you what we have in the front real quick. Because this is the flexibility that we're talking about when we get into this. So, in the front cargo bay, we have the Rock DS, enclosed mining vehicle, and then we have the Argo Cargo. So for now, these fit in here fairly easily, fairly nice. It's going to give you potential to mine and also like take samples from planet surfaces, as well as deliver cargo, etc. But when this vehicle here comes out with a rescue variant, this back pod would be essentially a rescue vehicle. And it would have the added benefit of being detachable, which means that if you were to drop your mining vehicle and some ground forces down on a planet's surface, you could also drop off a medical pod so they could take care of themselves while they're on the planet's surface and the Carrack isn't around. That's the added benefit of this. Also, it could drop that medical pod off, and you could potentially use this Argo Cargo to help people move goods from their ships or other vessels to, you know, carriers, etc. It's another place that you could potentially make money off of. So not only does the Argo get the potential of, you know, doing rescue missions in the future, but also the potential to help people move cargo and goods to their ships. So this could work with the bigger capital class ships, etc., which I think is very nice, as well as it just being a pretty decent platform. Even with this cargo module here, it has a jump seat in the back, so you can bring 2 people, plus the additional cargo in the back, so that's all good. So keeping this in mind, what does that mean with these cargo bays? Well, essentially, these cargo bays would be the main way on and off of the ship, okay? So when these cargo bays open in the future, there's no way for anyone to get from that cargo bay up to this here ramp. So when you go down here, these things are going to lower eventually, and that's going to be how you get your crew on and off the ship, which means out of all the ships that I've seen, this one's going to be the most defensible, because there's no way for an enemy force to just attack you, get up on this cargo ramp, and then get up into your ship. Whereas every other ship tends to have either an external ramp that you can activate from the outside, or you have your ramp that you load your vehicles off. So that rock and that Argo Cargo, that ramp would be the main way for someone to get from the ground into the ship. But there's no reason for me to open that ramp unless I'm dropping ground forces with the mining vehicle. So what would we store back here in the cargo bay? So as you can see, we already have basically 3 attack craft that are going to be in that upper hangar, as well as the potential for that drop ship, or the PCs dropping people on planet surfaces, transporting them around to certain planets, you know, transportation missions, etc., small cargo missions. So that has a lot of versatility. Then we have mining, and we have rescue and potentially cargo hauling in the front. So here we're going to have the Ursa rover, okay? And then you're going to have 1 or 2 warthogs, potentially more, but at least, you know, 2 warthogs probably. Otherwise, you could maybe do like 2 Ursas if you wanted to, or an Ursa and a DS. So I would probably go Ursa and 2 Cyclones, or Ursa and another DS. But Ursa and 2 Cyclones is going to be the starting point. Those are going to be your initial ground forces that you deploy when you hit the ground. So here you would land the Carrack, or you would fly the Carrack over an area. You would scan the surface. You'd deploy the PCs potentially to a location. Then when you land the Carrack on the ground, you would deploy your Ursa and your Cyclones for kind of a ground defense. And then if you were going to mine, you would put your additional mining ships down. So like this next cargo pod, you would have the option of additional mining vehicle, potentially, additional Warthogs if you wanted, or Cyclones if you wanted, or additional Furies. So you could have probably 2 Furies, 2 to 4, probably 4 Furies here. So anywhere, you could probably do 4 Furies or 4 Cyclones. So if you did 4 Cyclones here, and you did 4 Furies here, and you had another DS here, that would give you backups for your stuff that you're putting out on the planet's surface. The Ursa rover is going to be something that escorts the mining vehicles. Basically, you're put defensive weapons inside of it. So if the miners come under attack, they can take shelter inside the Ursa. The Ursa should be decent against the ground targets, and then the weaponry inside will help keep them safe while you deploy forces to go rescue your miners if something happens. And then this back section would just be for pure cargo for the most part. Or, you know, if you had to store like vehicles that you find or anything along those lines, you would keep those here. But if you happen to find a lot of cargo that you want to transport and sell, what you would do is you would drop off your mining vehicles and your rovers, etc., onto the ground and have them perform mining operations and ground-based missions while you go and deliver the cargo that's loaded. And then you just come back and pick them up afterwards. Conversely, you could also use like the Argo potentially to move cargo to like upper atmosphere ships from the ground without lifting the Carrack. So if you had a cargo module for this, or if you stored an extra cargo module, say instead of putting a bunch of Furies inside one of those hangars, you put a cargo module and a drop carrier module and whatever else for this in there, then you could do that. So you have the optional flexibility of the Argo. But yeah, this is just my kind of general overview of what I think is a pretty decent like utility package on the Carrack, and potentially a couple of different additional craft that basically give you more flexibility in the verse. So repair, refuel, and rearm has a versatility because you can pretty much do that for anybody that you run across their ships, and you can do it just for your own ship here, the Carrack in general, and potentially you could repair downed craft to a flyable state and have your organization slowly grow just by reclaiming craft. Because although we make money going and doing missions, if we're exploring in the Carrack and we don't want to go back to the world, that money that we earn from the missions doesn't really matter if we can't go to a shop to buy anything. So using what you got in the outer reaches of space and kind of repurposing things that you find might be better suited than just going and buying things and traveling back and forth if we're going to continuously scout. So you're also going to have the the scouting capabilities, the travel points that you can find. There's a lot of potential in this ship, but essentially anytime that the Carrack lands or goes to a planet, you want the potential to respond to any sort of event that would happen. So if we get attacked by, a few fighters or something, you can deploy Furies and the PCs and your gunners. So you'd be able to deploy a pretty decent little bitty strike package to defend yourself in emergencies. If you're doing ground-based operations, you're going to have, the Cyclones and the Furies and the PCs and the Argo, all of that stuff to kind of respond and deal with certain things that you find, especially if you have to get the Carrack into position before it can actually attack or do anything. But hopefully those vehicles alone would be enough to handle most situations. And then if you're in space, you can still do bounty missions or rescue missions, unloading cargo and stuff from people, potentially salvage, but we don't know how the salvage thing would work, if there's going to be salvage drones, or potentially if you have enough players on the ship without suffocating, maybe they can just manually salvage ships for material and store it, and you don't really need specified materials. This is the drone bay, as we see here. But there is like 4 to 8 drone pads or something here, which makes me wonder, because even here you could do like 4 scout drones, 2 repair drones, 2 medical drones, or 2 scout drones, 2 salvage drones, 2 medical drones, 2 whatever the other drone was, I didn't say. But yeah, 2 more potential crew seats. Hopefully, you get some sort of insight off of this. I don't know how effective everything's going to be, but in general, I think it's a pretty decent package. The one thing I would say with the Fury is I don't know how easy it's going to be to repair compared to the Buccaneer. Because the Fury has that alien tech inside of it, I don't know if it's going to be that easy to repair in-game, like once everything gets added, whereas the Buccaneer is stated to have been really easy to repair, no matter like how much resources that you have. But if we have a dedicated repair ship coming in and out to help us, this could potentially fix this problem. Either case, if we have these 2 drones here and we keep a couple spare down in the cargo bay, we could potentially deploy the cargo bay spares, or we could just swap these out when they get damaged until we go back to the mainland. So there is that. Hopefully this helps you think about what you want inside of your Carrack and what you can use the Carrack for. Feel free to tell me any things that you think it would be better for the Carrack, something I'm not thinking about. Weapon loadouts, etc. for like disabling ships, because I really want the potential to disable ships and not just destroy every ship that I come across. So feel free to tell me anything that you think is important to know about the Carrack. Alright, y'all guys have a good one, and have fun in the verse.